Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of Wendigo horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story. The Wendigo that didn't leave me alone. I honestly don't know where to start or if I'm ready to be posting this story of mine, but hopefully it'll help. I know you won't believe me, and honestly, I won't even blame you guys. It still doesn't make sense in my own head. I've heard stories about unknown creatures in woods, but never thought I'd encounter one myself, you know? I posted another story about some creepy old people that I had encountered in the woods, but that's nothing. This makes a good horror story for people, but it eats me every day. But here we go. I love to go hiking. I go with my 3-year-old German Shepherd and let her go unleashed since we like to go to secluded places. Now I have been hiking all over Utah mountains and wanted a new hike that wasn't too far from me. I have an app that tells me about hikes near me, if it is a hard hike, reviews, and if it's dog-friendly. Now I was scrolling through All Trail looking for possibly something new, but I wasn't too hopeful. But to my delight, there was something new. I don't know why I don't remember the name of it, but I do remember it was at the bottom of the list, and it had one review saying good. I thought that was kind of strange. Mostly because people love to review hikes and try to tell the city what they can do to improve the hike and make it more safe, but I figured it wasn't a popular hike. So the next day, Kyrie and I packed up our stuff and went up towards the hike. I always carry first aid kit, extra food, a knife, and just emergency stuff in case I get lost. It's important to mention now that Kyrie eats a raw diet, meaning she eats raw meat not cooked, and since we were going so early in the morning, I thought I could bring some with us. I put it in her blue backpack I make her wear and decided when it was getting warmer we would stop to eat. Where I live, there's a long drive through the canyon and many roads going towards the hike you'd like to go on. This one was a little further than I'm used to, but I didn't care, it was new, and I was excited, so was Kyrie. She cries in the car until we get there. Now I was following the directions on my phone and saw that it had led me towards a thin road that was hidden. No wonder I haven't heard of this place. It was hidden and far up the mountain. The road only fit one car, so the whole time I was so anxious that another car would come down and how I would handle that, but there never was. I never saw another car. When I got to the parking lot, if I could call it that, I noticed there was only space for like 3 cars, all in a tight space. It was small, so I decided to park my car with the front facing towards the road. I thought maybe it was private property. Checked the app, but it didn't say anything about private property. I shrugged it off, got Kyrie out, prepared us, and saw the trail. Now, even though I knew there wasn't anyone parked there, I kept Kyrie on a leash. I didn't know if there were bikers along the trail, but after 30 minutes or so I didn't see anyone. I decided to let her off leash. It was a steep hike for the first half, but it was beautiful. We were deep in the woods, and I felt at peace. I used to wear headphones when I hiked, but didn't anymore, so I was enjoying the natural sounds of the forest. It was still early in the morning, so I wore a light jacket and decided when it got warmer I'd give Kyrie her breakfast. Now before you start to hate, I know bringing Kyrie's raw meat was absolutely stupid and ignorant of me. I had never seen a bear or wolf or anything, so I got cocky and just thought it was okay. I learned my lesson the bad day, so no need to tell me I was dumb. But honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you commented that. Now here is where we begin the bad part of this story. The trail finally stopped being steep and sort of an easy hike from here. When you got to the top, you could see through the trees a beautiful open meadow. On the other side of it, you can hear a river and a waterfall. The trail went around the meadow. The meadow was absolutely beautiful with the mountains in the background, the sound of the water. This hike was almost the most beautiful one I had ever been to. When Kyrie and I were sort of in the center of the meadow, she stopped right in front of me and looked towards the meadow. Kyrie always walked ahead of me, and when she stopped, I stopped since I trusted her judgment. Before I could look, the smell hit me first. You know, the typical rotting smell, but oh my God. Words cannot explain how bad it stank. It burned my nose and started to make me tear up. I put my shirt over my nose, feeling nauseous, and looked over to where Kyrie was looking. In the middle of the meadow was a deer. Now I've only seen does, but never a male deer in person. But his antlers were huge. Have you ever seen Princess Mononoke? When he sees the deer spirit walking across the water, and how big his antlers were. Almost like that. The beauty of the deer was amazing, but not enough to take away the disgusting smell that was making me sick. The deer was looking towards the mountains and away from me. I thought maybe Kyra's food was going bad. I checked that, and it seemed fine. When I looked up again, the deer was looking towards our direction. I noticed that Kyra's hackles went up at that. She started to cry nervously. Now I've heard of Wendigos and skinwalkers. I am Native American. It is common for these creatures to be in our childhood stories. That and also listening to scary stories on YouTube. Now when Kyrie did that, I got a bad feeling in my stomach despite the sickness. It was a Wendigo, and I knew that. Now I didn't know what to do. These creatures were only a part of my stories to make me go to bed, not to instructions of what to do. Plus, my grandmother was the one with the stories and passed away. She was the one with the experience, not my mom or anyone else. I glanced at Kyrie again when she cried and looked back towards the creature. It started to stand on its hind legs. Holy hell, it was fucking tall, and it faced my direction. It started to walk towards me. I was going to run until I heard in my head, I am the one of this land. Suddenly, it started to run towards me full speed. I screamed, called Kyrie, and started to run. Kyrie was following behind me. I started to cry as I was running since I could hear it catch up to me. It was loud. It was destroying everything it came in contact with to get to me. The adrenaline running through me was making me just focus on running. I didn't know where to go, I just ran. The trail suddenly got smaller and bushes with thorns started to appear, but I didn't feel them as they cut my arms. As I heard it got closer, it suddenly went to the left as I ran straight. I somehow had the balls to look back to see it was gone, but also Kyrie. Kyrie, I said, but right as I called out for her, the trail ended with a foot drop onto a patch of rocks. I hit my head, bleeding a bit. But again, I couldn't feel it that much and just got up. I looked towards the forest when I suddenly heard a loud cry from my right. It was Kyrie. Kyrie! I cried out. I stood up, crying and lost at what to do. I looked back to see a river leading up to the waterfall I heard. Suddenly a heavy weight ran into me and we both fell back. I hit my head again on the back and looked up to see Kyrie. Kyrie had blood all over her. It was pouring from her neck. Kyrie! I cried out. She was whimpering and breathing heavy. She still had her backpack on with some cuts in it. Before I had a chance to help her, a scream came from the forest. I looked back at the waterfall and somehow had the strength to pick up my 85-pound dog and carry her. I don't know where I was planning to go. I was just running to the waterfall as if it was a safe place. I was almost there when I heard the creature land on the rocks that I did early. I tripped at that and looked back to see it looking at me. Its eyes were black, or I think so. It could also be that there wasn't anything in there. I don't know. I took off Kyra's backpack and threw it towards the monster, hoping it would take the meat and just leave us alone. I was scooting back towards the waterfall, crying as I did so, holding and dragging Kyrie with my left arm. I found that being so close to the creature made me literally weak to my knees. It walked over to me, taking huge steps. It looked so different than before. Before it looked like a deer, and now as it crawled over to me it looked like a monster. I don't know how else to describe this awful demon. I don't. I'm sorry. but I felt water hit my head hard as I had reached the waterfall. I kept going until I was up against the wall. There barely enough space where water wasn't hitting Kyrie and his faces. Kyrie felt limp at this point. I could somewhat see the creature through the water, but still saw it coming towards me. It stood on its hind legs when it was close enough to me, watching me. The smell was so disgusting, I couldn't help but throw up in my mouth. It reached his arms out to grab me. I screamed so loud. I actually lost my voice. After I let out that scream, another scream came from the deep forest. The creature snapped its head almost completely backward, looking towards the scream. The scream sounded like the one this one had let out earlier. I was still holding on to Kyrie, crying and screaming since its arm was close. It looked back to me, pulling its arm away, and again said in my mind, "I am the one of this land." With that, it took steps back watching me and went down the riverbank. It crawled on all fours, stopping next to Kyrie's backpack. It ripped it apart and pulled out the meat, eating it with the plastic bag that it was in. It suddenly screamed and ran towards that direction of the scream from earlier. When I thought it was gone, I stood up shakily and carried Kyrie towards the trail again. When I was running, I came across my backpack that I had left earlier and stopped. It was ripped apart, so I took off my jacket and wrapped it around Kyrie's neck where she was bleeding a lot. After that, I barely remember. All I remember is carrying Kyrie and driving down, screaming the whole way towards the emergency vet. They asked us what happened, and I told them it was a bear. They called the ambulance since I had blood all over me, and they couldn't tell if it was mine or Kyrie's. Kyrie made it through surgery and had to have some stitches on her, along with a pad. It didn't really heal, and a huge bump grew on there. It had been infected but eventually got better. She also had a bite mark on the top of her left eye, but that healed much better. They pulled out a 4-inch tooth. I don't have it because I couldn't even look at it, but they declared it from a bear, even though they said it looked weird. While I was waiting for Kyrie, I went to look up the trail on the app, and it was gone. Why or how, but it is. I don't remember where it is either. That's all a blur. I have some pictures up of Kyrie. The one with my niece is a hike my mom took her on with my niece. It had been weeks after, and my mom thought to try and help her through it. Kyrie looks nervous in the picture, but you can see the huge bump on the left side of her neck. There's also a picture with Kyrie and her bandages around her neck. And the one that is the most recent of her neck, it's black. The stitches came out. The last picture is of the top of her head, also black, but it's healed now. I'll have pictures of these, but don't know where or how to post these. I haven't been hiking since, and I refuse to let Kyrie go. That time my mom took her, she did it while I was at work, but regretted it because she said Kyrie was crying and was so scared they had to just go home. My mom knows. I screamed at night from nightmares for a week or two. My mom put white candles in my room to get rid of the bad spirits attracted to my negativity. So yeah, here's my story. I've heard stories where people saw a Wendigo and they didn't get harmed, and God, I wish I went through that. I hate hiking. My therapist thinks I may have some PTSD, but only knows of it as a bear. I'm getting through it. Kyrie is too. Hopefully one day I can go back, but I don't see that being for a while. Please, if you're going to go up to the mountains, please prepare. Mother Nature is not only unpredictable, but has things in there that just don't make sense in our heads. So please be safe. I say that with serious sincerity. If there's any other subreddits I can post this to, I would love to know, so I can share my story and maybe help others out there. Thanks for reading. Second story. There's a girl who lives alone in the woods. Down a long dirt road, past a mile or so of forest, there's a girl that lives all by herself in a big house. All of her relatives have passed, leaving her a treasure trove of valuables and money that she keeps on the property. There's not even a dog to keep her safe from people who would take those things away. And when the wrong ears hear all those things, their eyes fill with dollar signs and they decide to make the trek. They always make the same wrong assumption, though, that I'm really alone. 4 men came to my house a few nights ago. I saw one of them carrying a crowbar and another had a gun tucked into his pants. I only closed my curtains and locked my bedroom door. I've seen this happen many times, and I can tell you exactly what came to pass, even if I wasn't a witness to all of it. They enter through the front door. They're always surprised to see it's unlocked, but they likely assume it's because I live so far out and am comfortable in the safety of seclusion. They split up in pairs, not worried about what they'll do if they find the owner of the house. She's just a girl, one who stares at the ground when she talks and who trips over her words in a rush to get them out. She's clearly not very bright, and she's clearly not very strong. One of my monsters is hiding under the couch tonight. When he saw they were coming, he slipped under there. One of their ankles strayed too close, and he's pulled under with not even a scream. In the morning, the man will wake up in a country where he doesn't speak the language and with no memory of how he got there, only that there's a bite mark on his leg and that he'll never feel safe in the dark again. He's the lucky one. The monster under the bed is merciful. The monster in the closet is not. The one with him assumes that the missing man is pulling a prank. He calls his name and starts poking around for him. He asks the other two, who are going through my grandmother's music boxes, where their friend went. They have no clue. They didn't see it happen. The searcher opens a pantry and out a clawed hand flies, wrapping around his throat and dragging him with. He screams and screams and screams until his throat is cut. In seconds, all the skin is flayed from his body, landing next to his body in a pile of fleshy ribbons. Eyeballs are squished like grapes. Teeth fall from his jaws into the ground with a sound not unlike dropping a handful of marbles. He isn't long in the world, but those remaining seconds are filled with some of the most excruciating pain a person could remotely comprehend. When the other two throw open the door, they find the whole pantry is soaked top to bottom with blood. The remains of their friend are unrecognizable as such, other than the scraps of his clothing and his crowbar. The two panic. They split up in their haste to escape. One runs into the backyard. His mistake. The monster outside the window lives out there, and he doesn't really interfere with trespassers unless someone bothers him. And when someone slams the back door open while screaming at the top of their lungs, well, that bothers him, as it would most people, I think. I don't talk about the monster out there, only that once his target was in sight, the unlucky soul didn't have the benefit of a quick death. He was dragged into the shed, and what happens in there I can't tell you. I just know that the man didn't expire until 3 nights later, and when that was happened, he was begging for death. The last one, in a blind panic, ran up the stairs to my room. He threw himself against the door once, twice, 3 times before it gave. I screamed and ran to my corner, my heart thumping in my ears. The man got up and stared at me. Fear turned to realization that I was the girl in the house, and not only that, I was somehow responsible for the mutilation of his friend. He took out his gun and pointed it at my face, calling me a slew of horrible names. He stops when he looks at my eyes. One's blue, now one's turned green. The pupil is constricted to a pinpoint. The other one looks washed out compared to how bright the other is. He can't stop staring at my eye. The gun nearly slips from his hand until I catch it, firmly pressing his hand to the grip. He's starting to shake, sweat dripping down the side of his face. I stare at him until he turns that gun on himself, putting it in his mouth before pulling the trigger. Blood paints the ceiling as the body thuds to the ground. I don't know what things people see when they look into my green eye, but I doubt it's anything good. I go to bed after this, knowing the monster under the bed will clean up after tonight's debacle. Not the closet monster. He's always been a real dick about that. The monster outside the window isn't allowed in the house. He tracks mud everywhere, and no one really likes his staring. It's good that he cleans, though, because I have to get back to work. I'm working on a book about thieves who think they can rob a girl who lives all alone, only to find out that she's not alone. And not only that, but that girl is the worst monster of them all, because she created the three monsters that live in under the bed, in the closet, and outside the bedroom window. Third story. The Wendigo at the edge of the lights. The engine stutters as I turn the key, but it dies a few seconds after. Damn it, her engine's cold. It might take a minute to get it running. Frickin' blizzards. I can't wait till winter's over, I say, turning the key more. Well, hurry up, it's freezing, Claire says, zipping up her hoodie. I turn the key 2 more times and Shelley shoots to life. Her lights flicker on and I hear Claire gasp. I look up and see a figure, just standing on the edge of my headlights. I can make out antlers like a deer, but it's on 2 legs. I push my door open and pull out my 9mm loaded with silver bullets, rack the slide, and aim it at the figure, knowing it's what I am hunting. As I do, I hear Claire get out and pull back the hammer of her .38 revolver. Javier, I say, pushing the truck release button. Javier wakes up and sees what's going on and starts to open the door, slowly stepping out. That's not a werewolf, Aiden, Claire says with some unease in her voice. Me and Javier start going back to the truck while not taking our eyes off the creature who is just standing there, watching us. We get to the back and open it up and lift the bottom panel, revealing a bunch of guns, ammo, and other things I've collected over the years. I grabbed the flamethrower I made a few months ago for fun and recently used to take out some out of sprig gun that was stuck in Minnesota and put the sling over me, letting it hang. I handed Javier his double barrel, shut the trunk, and walked back to my door, keeping my Beretta aimed as I walked back. We stayed like this for a while, then the creature started sprinting at us, moving way too fast for a werewolf. I fired 2 rounds, the first hitting the creature in the shoulder and the second hitting its upper chest, but the creature didn't stop rushing us. Within just a few seconds, the distance was closed, and it pounced on me before I could get another shot off, pushing me into the snow, digging its claws into my shoulders. The creature was inches away from me, its skin on its face seemingly peeled back, revealing a deer skull with teeth more like a wolf, not deer teeth. Its skin leathery, with a coat of dark gray tangled and matted hair with blood scattered about, some dried and some wet. At this point, I knew exactly what this was, a Wendigo. As I was struggling to get the thing off, I saw a bullet collide with the thing's back as Claire's revolver rang out. The Wendigo looked at her and brought its claw up and swung down fast, pushing her over. Javier slides across the hood and fires a shot at the thing but misses, sending buckshot flying over it. The Wendigo shoots its head to Claire, who is still getting up, and jumps onto her, leaving me. I stand up and turn to Javier, who is visibly upset he missed. "Shotty," I shout. He tosses me the gun, and I run up and blast a hole into the Wendigo's back, making it really upset. He turns to me and lets out a scream. I brace myself. The Wendigo hits me, sending back into the snow, which helps my fall, but the claws left a nice gash in my chest. I look over and see Javier got his fire axe out of the trunk and was swinging at the Wendigo, who was preoccupied with Claire. He dug the axe into the Wendigo's shoulder, putting a nice cut into it. The Wendigo screams and walks a few feet, then collapses onto the snow-covered road. "Burn it now," Claire says to me, running over to it with Javier. Javier takes his axe out of it and raises it up, then swings back down, hitting its neck and chopping its head off. He bends over and picks up the head by the antlers. "A nice trophy, right, Aiden?" As he shows me, Claire grabs it and starts trying to pull it from his hands. "No, we have to burn it," she says, getting in a tug-of-war battle with a 6 feet 3 inches dude who is jacked and actually almost won. I get up and run over, helping Claire pull the head, and thankfully we got it free. Before we can say anything, she pulls out a pocket knife and cuts the antlers out and shoves them into her pack. "Hey," I want those, Javier says, crossing his arms. She shrugs and gets back into the car. I flick on the Zippo light that is on the end of the flamethrower and begin to torch the body, which lets off an awful smell, but I've smelt worse. Javier hits me right where the Wendigo ripped into my shoulder and says, "Good work, buddy," as he giggles a little, knowing that hurt. I smile and shake my head, then run to the trunk to put my flamethrower back and get into the car with Claire. I stick out my fist and she hesitantly bumps it. "Nice," I say, turning around and putting my seat belt on. Javier comes around, putting his shotgun up and closes the trunk, then comes and get in on the passenger side. "We should probably go to the hospital. You're pretty beat up, Aiden," Claire says, eyeing my wounds. "I hate hospital," I say, putting the car into drive. "Aiden," she says, unamused. "Fine." I push down the gas pedal and Shelley works her way out of the snow and starts moving towards town, leaving the flaming body behind. Fourth story. Monster I carried out of the woods. I found a monster in the woods. Every year I spend a week in the woods alone. I cannot stand being inside my empty house on the anniversary of when I lost everything important in my life. The walls close in on me, and I feel suffocated. So, I go to the woods. I sleep, drink, and try to shoot at least one deer. On the second day of my trip, I was walking through the forest in damp weather, feeling miserable, when I came across it. A creature hanging by its foot from a tree. I panicked when I first saw the figure strung up in the tree and rushed forward, hoping if it was a person I could still help. As I got closer, I saw that even though its body was similar to a human, all the proportions looked wrong. The legs far too long and skinny. The stomach sunken in, rib cage visible, making it seem like it had no muscle mass or fat. I stopped below the creature, staring up at it in disbelief of what I was seeing. One foot was stuck inside a bear trap that was attached to a chain, hooked over a branch. Its entire body was hanging from a torn and bloody ankle snared inside the trap. Wrists tied together and arms so long they nearly reached the ground as they dangled past its head. The creature's face was covered by a blank wooden oval with moss spilling out from it. At first, I was certain it was dead. As I got closer, I saw the chest rise weakly as if let out small wheezing breaths from under the mask. Even without seeing what was under the mask, I knew this thing wasn't human. The woods had a bad reputation of people going missing. Most didn't like camping overnight inside the forest anymore. It was a good place to fish and hunt, but not to stay the night. I had my hunting rifle with me. I could put it out of its misery, or just left it alone. Someone put this thing here. They might be back for it. Misty rain came down, and I could see puff of my breath in the terrible weather. My feet cold and fingers stiff. It would get dark in a few hours. I should go back to my camp and get dry, or else I would get sick. Or leave this damned forest before any more of these creatures came for me. Instead, I did something only an insane person would. I placed my gear on the ground to climb the tree to get the creature down. It was the middle of the night when the creature stirred. I treated the wounds the best I could. Getting the bear trap off without cutting my hand took almost an hour to do. Dragging the lanky thing back to camp worn me out, and I still needed to dry the creature off and wrap up its wounds. The damn thing better appreciate what I did for it. While I waited for it to wake up, I sat by the fire, sitting under a tarp to keep dry. I let the monster I dragged back use my tent, keeping the flap open so I could keep an eye on it. I was dead tired, but didn't want to fall asleep with whatever the thing was close by to eat me in my sleep. Its limbs were so long I had to fold them to make sure it fit inside my small tent. At some point in the middle of the night, I heard movement in my tent. Slowly a hand came out, long fingers testing the damp ground. I couldn't see the thing's expression because of the mask and moss covering its entire head. Even while it slept, I didn't dare look what it really looked like. I remained still, wrapped up in my spare blanket. If it attacked, I could shoot it, but I didn't even reach for my rifle. Half of the creature's body came out of the tent, body freezing up when it sensed me nearby. The next few seconds were tense. Neither of us moved, waiting for the other to act first. I'd hoped this would be a treat and release process. That when this creature woke up, it would just go back off into the woods. I was not so lucky. It made the choice to attack the easy target. Darting forward, it cleared the distance between us quickly. I was knocked over, thing bony hands pinning me down to the ground. The mask flipped up so fast I never saw what was underneath. Sharp teeth grabbed a hold of my jacket and started to shake it, tearing the fabric, but not reaching my skin. The attack didn't last very long. I was fully ready to accept my death in that moment. After all, I had nothing waiting for me outside of that forest. If I could become food, at least my death would mean something. But this creature didn't even give me that. It stopped, releasing my coat and staggered back. Collapsing on its side, it let out ragged, wheezing breaths. It used up all its strength in that thin body. I watched it, wondering what to do next. I grabbed a blanket from my tent, trying to wrap it up to keep the creature warm. It weakly pushed my hands away, sharp claws catching my coat but not tearing it. Wrapping the thing very much like a burrito, I went about getting it back inside the tent. I couldn't see the creature's expression, but I could sense how annoyed my new campmate was being manhandled and wrapped up. Until it regained some strength, it would need to accept some help. I went back outside, wrapped myself in my own blanket again, and stared back into the weak fire. I planned on staying up all night, but I drifted between sleep until dawn came. Out in the trees I heard sounds, as if someone was walking around in the dark just beyond my camp. Fear fluttered in my stomach. I was out in the open, exhausted from the cold weather. I didn't mind death, but I was still afraid of whatever was stalking around in the night. When morning arrived, I looked around the camp to find someone, or something had in fact been circling my camp. Muddy tracks and broken twigs gave me enough evidence of being watched. I wondered if it was more of those creatures waiting to grab the injured on inside the tent. At least I lived through one night so far. My new guest was out of the tent when I got back to camp. It wrapped in a blanket, glaring at me from under the mask. I could feel the eyes on me, even if I couldn't see them. I needed to think of what to do next. I could just pack up and leave. I doubted these things would follow me into the city. It still wasn't healed up and wouldn't be able to protect itself if whoever hung it up came back. Trying to get the creature to eat, it had no interest in the hot dogs and marshmallows I brought. It was a little surreal seeing a lanky creature like it in the dim gray morning light. This thing wasn't human, and yet I was helping it for reasons I didn't know. Aside from people, this thing might eat other meat. If I could shoot some game, maybe a good meal would help it gain some strength back. And maybe for all my trouble, I would be eaten in the end. Only time would tell how thankful this thing would be for all the help. I didn't want to go off into the forest hunting alone. If another person came across my camp, I didn't want them to come across my monster. One of them would end up dead if that happened. I paced, trying to think of what to do. As if it could sense my train of thought, the lanky creature bundled the blanket, putting it inside the tent to stay dry. Then, it climbed up my back, lanky limbs wrapping around me. My skin crawled and stood, back bent, trying to support the sudden weight change. I waited for the attack that never came. We just awkwardly stood there waiting on each other to do something. I could go hunting if I carried the creature on my back. It would take longer than normal, but could be done. Picking up my rifle and small pack, I started off into the trees, still really creeped out by the thing that I decided to help. At least it wasn't trying to eat me. I really needed to call the creature on my back something. Naming things was difficult. I went through at least 100 while sneaking through the woods, trying to pick up on any game tracks. I didn't know what it was beside not human. Skinwalker and Wendigo just didn't suit what it was from what I've heard about them. No legends or cryptid name felt right. Soon I found myself not caring if I had the name of its species. I doubted humans even came across them often enough to give it a name. I was startled out of my thoughts when I came right up on a deer. A decent-sized buck that should have run before I even got this close. Holding my breath, I froze, hand on my rifle. Careful to make as little noise as possible, I raised my weapon to get my shot lined up. For a moment, I wondered what I was doing was even right. This thing I was taking care of could be evil. The missing person cases was a hint towards that. Then again, it might just be a part of nature. Killing a deer to feed the creature wouldn't be wrong if this is what happened in the woods without me interfering. I shot twice for good measure. The buck fell with a grunt of surprise. The thing on my back dropped to the ground, moving like liquid. It sulked towards the fallen creature, masked face darting around as if it expected something was going to swoop in and take its food. While watching it eat, I decided on a name in the worst way possible. I've seen videos of what a fox sound like. Those nightmare screeches and sounds were the same kind this creature made while it tore into the deer and ate. Because its back was turned to me, I never saw its face. Just the fact the mask was lifted so it could bite and tear off chunks of flesh. Fox felt like a suitable name for the monster I'd taken in. Fox, I said mostly to myself, trying the name out. The creature slightly turned at my voice, letting me see a human-looking mouth, but filled with bloody sharp teeth. I think he liked the name. Fox ate through the entire deer with insane speed. Even after devouring through pounds of meat, he was still skinny enough for me to see his rib cage. It was a mystery where he put it all. Gathering up the larger bones, he followed behind me back to the camp. At least he could walk now, although limping and trailing behind. He crawling mostly on all fours even though he was holding bones in his hands. I led him to the river first so he could get cleaned up in the cold water, and I refilled some of my bottles to boil later. When we arrived back at camp, Fox gnawed on a rib while reluctantly letting me look at his injured ankle. It healed so much I knew he would be fine by tonight or tomorrow. Watching him chew though his bone stash, I wondered yet again what I was doing. Not only did I not leave him to die, I'd named him. There was something seriously wrong with me if I could get attached to a creature like this. You can eat me, you know. I told him, not knowing if he knew what I was saying. Fox looked over at my voice, but didn't pause in his gnawing. Bone under his moss blanket covering his face. Strangely enough, I wasn't scared of him. I'd already accepted my death for a while now. If he wanted to eat me next, I would almost welcome it. The rest of the day, I let him wander around camp, and I kept the fire going and took a few short naps to catch up on sleep. When night fell, the fear of death finally came to me. I was inside the tent while Fox stayed beside the fire. I'd heard noises from outside and carefully crawled out from my sleeping bag to try and see the source. It sounded like a few people walking just outside where the firelight could reach. Fox tensed up, looking ready to attack if needed. I found my rifle, taking it into my hand as silently as I could. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I could faintly see forms similar to Fox moving around in the trees. There was more of whatever he was in this forest. I stood waiting for them to make a move, rifle pointing downward. I didn't want to shoot one if they only showed up to pick up a missing member of their pack. One was brave enough to poke its head into the light. It was low to the ground, lanky elbows pointing up. It also had a blank wooden mask, but it had a mane of tangles, branches covering the upper half of its body. For a second, I thought I spotted glowing eyes inside that heap of wood staring daggers at me. Well, go on, I whispered to Fox, trying to encourage him to go and rejoin his group. Almost like cats, they got closer to each other on all fours, backs arched, studying and doing a half circle around each other. Other creatures appeared, watching the exchange, each having a mask of wood with some sort of pile of forest debris covering their faces. Some stood on two legs, making them almost 8 feet tall, other on all four ready to swiftly run forward if startled. It looked like it was going well. Fox got closer to the other creature and reached a clawed hand over as a gesture I didn't understand. In a blink of an eye, they both flew into a flurry of motion. Horrible hissing and garbling cries came from the tangled pair thrashing trying to kill each other. My heart sank and a pit of black fear opened up my stomach. Fox healed up a bit since he was with me, but he wasn't strong enough to fight off the newcomer, let alone all the ones in the woods watching. I accepted I would die, but I was not able to let Fox die with me. I lifted my rifle and aimed it away from the fight. I fired it off into the woods, aiming at nothing. I hoped this sound would make them stop, and it worked. The one creature stopped to look around for the sound. Fox kicked the other aside and scrambled to me as I ran over and stood between him and the other pale form. The newcomer was covered in scratches dripping in blood. Fox looked worse. His arm broken and countless cuts on his thin body from the brief fight. Getting between them, I received a fast, long cut to my arm, but it was nothing compared to what Fox went through. I pointed the rifle towards the monster on all fours, ready to fire if needed. It stared at me from behind that faceless mask. The other creatures didn't move. I heard Fox shuffling around behind me, but I didn't turn to see what he was doing. When the other creature turned its head away from me to watch Fox, I finally did the same. He'd taken off the faceless wooden mask from his hood of moss and tossed it into the fire in front of all of us. The wood gave off a high-pitched shrieking sound as if it was an animal dying. Black flames shot up spewing into the sky for a few seconds until the noise died down. The mask was burned up completely. Fox sat next to the fire, nursing his bad arm. Slowly, the creatures around us started to leave one by one until the one that attacked Fox remained. It sat, blood dripping from its wounds. Finally, it too turned and left us. My arm bleeding and rifle feeling heavy. Dropping my weapon, I collapsed to my knees. Caring about someone else was beyond stressful. White-hot pain started to come through my body from my cut. I found my arm was too heavy to move to see how deep the wound was. Trying to stand, my legs suddenly refused to work. Not knowing why, I fainted into a deep sleep I didn't awake from until it was morning. When I opened my eyes, I was inside my tent on my side. My arm out front of me so I could see the wound was stuffed with moss. I felt hot and too weak to move, or do anything at all. I couldn't even move my fingers. Pain came in waves as I tried to ignore it. Focusing on anything but the throbbing in my arm, I listened to the pattering or rain outside. The light was gray and impossible to tell what time it was. The tent flap opened, letting cool air and misty rain come inside the tent. Fox must have been the one to put me in here, but he didn't know how zippers worked. My energy fading, I fell asleep again. The next few days I knew I was dying. Whatever got into my cut was nasty. That creature easily being able to kill with one strike of its claws. I slept most of the time, far too weak and feverish to move. Fox would keep me hydrated by lifting my head to let me drink from my steel water bottle I brought along. But the water tasted muddy. He was getting it from the river, not knowing to boil it. His efforts might just kill me faster. In my fever dreams, I was tormented by the truth that haunted my every waking hour. The reason why I wanted death so badly, even though I was too much of a coward to do it myself. I wasn't there to hear the car accident, but was still plagued by the sounds. My mind repeated the sound of the officer knocking on my door at 4 in the morning to awkwardly tell me the news. His first time saying such tragic words to another person. And I knew it was all my fault. 5 years ago, I cheated on my wife. A one-night fling. I did not have a good reason aside from I just felt like it. I told her knowing I would be unable to hide it. She very understandably got upset and left the house to her brother's place 4 blocks away. They both drank and insulted me, something I rightfully deserved. To this day, I don't know why they decided to drive back home that night. She was too drunk to drive, but her brother thought he was fine. It was only 4 blocks away from our home, and yet they got into a 3-car pileup from people leaving the bar for the night. Everyone in my wife's car died that night. Everyone else in the other cars were lucky enough to receive injuries they could recover from. 3 people died. My wife, her brother, and our daughter in the back seat of the car. I went to sleep when she left and wasn't even aware she took our daughter to her brother's place with her. All because I made one decision to go home with a woman I thought was attractive. A whim killed 3 people. I needed to live with that fact for the rest of my life. Delirious from the fever, I could barely keep my eyes open. I saw Fox sitting next to me, his form blurry in my weak state. I couldn't handle falling back asleep and hearing my daughter was gone again. Please, kill me, I begged him in a voice barely above a whisper. He didn't react for a long time. The longer I looked, the more I noticed he was slightly different, more human, his proportions not as lanky as before. He leaned in, and I saw instead of the moss covering his face, he replaced it with torn-up fabric that was once my clothing. He didn't keep it together with glue or thread. My tired brain wondered how the heaps of cloth stayed on his head. Reaching over, he took my arm, now red and infected from the cut. It caused a jolt of pain that almost knocked me out again to rattle my bones. Lifting my hand to his covered face, Fox lifted some of the rags to reveal a mouth of sharp teeth. Without any hesitation, he took my pinky finger off in one bite. I let out a soft scream, struggling to stay awake. Letting my hand drop, his long fingers came into view, moving directly to my throat. Darkness overtook me. I died. Fox choked the life out of me. Then, he gave some back. It's something beyond anything I could ever understand of how it happened. And I don't think I ever need to fully understand it. I woke up, scar on my arm, feeling better than I had in years. Aside from being stiff, my illness left me. I was still inside my tent, rain softly hitting against the outside. Looking to my side, a bundle of blankets was taking up most of the space. Peeking under them, Fox was curled up. He moved from his nest being disturbed, but didn't wake up. I left him alone, climbing out of the tent trying to get the kinks out of my back. It was still damp, but I was glad to be in the cool air outside. A few minutes passed after I came out, and I took stock of everything. My pinky was still gone, but wound healed along with the cut on my arm. Aside from my clothing being torn apart by Fox, nothing else touched the camp while I was out of commission. I was wondering what I should do when crunching of twigs drew my attention. A pair of men stood wearing raincoats over wet gear, both with rifles over their shoulders, unable to keep them dry. I thought I saw some chain poking out from one of their overpacked bags. Each seemed as if they were camping for a long time and worn down to the bone. "Can I help you with anything?" I asked the pair, voice cracking from a dry throat. I knew who they were. Without a doubt, they trapped Fox and left him hung up in a tree to die. I wondered if I was going to run into the people who did such a thing and still didn't know how to react when it happened. "Have you seen anything strange at night?" One asked slowly while looking over my camp. I felt my hands start to shake and forced myself to keep them steady. "Nope. Nothing. Terrible weather, don't you think? I'm going to pack up and leave today." I hoped I sounded casual enough. Glancing over, I saw Fox sitting up in the tent, moving around in the blanket pile silently. From the angle only I was the one who could see him. The 2 men looked at each other as if trying to decide something. If Fox saw them, would he kill them? Would I let him after what they did? If we let them go back into the forest, these 2 would kill more of those creatures. I was sure of that. Whatever was in the woods, they hunted them down. And I found that I didn't care. I didn't save Fox because of what he is. I saved him to give myself a reason to keep going. He was special because I'd named him and made him special. They hurt him before he became that. If they left, I wouldn't go after them. But if they dared trying to harm Fox now, I wouldn't hesitate in killing them. Either they were too tired to deal with me, or I looked natural enough for them to believe my lie. All right, take care of yourself, the older one said with a small wave of his hand. I watched as they left, still holding my breath. Fox poked out his head covered in rags directed towards the men who was already gone. Still not too late to go after them. Fox gave them no notice. Do you want to go home? I asked him, not even sure if he could understand me. When I left the woods, I took something with me. A creature that almost looks human now. I sold my house and bought a very small cabin by the lake. I figured it would be better suited for Fox being around woods. He's never spoken to me, and I've never seen what face he hides. There is still so much I don't know about the monster I carried out of those woods. The only thing I do know about him is he's now my reason to keep living. I never needed a good one. I just needed something. Fifth story. Wendigo encounter. This is a repost. I had to fix some spacing errors. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I'm scared shitless. After hearing stories and looking stuff up online, I'm fairly sure it was a Wendigo. Me, my son and girlfriend were attacked by something. We were camping up in the northernmost area of Washington. My girlfriend is incredibly superstitious, so she insisted we brought weapons. So I had my combat knife and a 12-gauge shotgun, and she brought a .22 rifle alongside a newly sharpened machete. Our son was just 3 years old at the time. She and I were set on edge from a park ranger who seemed very tense and uneasy, who stopped us and instead of confiscating our weapons told us to be careful and stay safe, then sent us along our way to the camp. When we got there, we were informed that several visitors had spoken about some unnatural noises and a pale creature that would mimic voices and sounds of people who weren't talking or seeming to be distracted. I laughed and put the idea out my mind, thinking to myself, there's no way. They're fucking with us. But I knew better. So we then reached the area we were going to set up camp. We immediately got a fire ready to light and set up our tent and bags. I fed my son as my girlfriend ate a snack. We decided to get a lay of the area, so me and my girlfriend hiked around for about an hour or so. I had one of those baby carrying backpacks and my son started to get real heavy. Everything seemed normal until I saw something down the almost path we were on. We walked closer to investigate and saw drag marks. It looked as if someone had killed a buck. There was a hole outlined in the dirt with a small dried pool of blood as if someone grabbed it from the antlers and pulled. That wouldn't be possible for any man to do. The buck, or whatever it was, would have been way too big for that. Shaken, we rushed back to base camp and restarted the fire and hurried back into our tent. Too afraid to leave since it was dusk by now, we stayed inside the tent and my girlfriend put our son to bed. Eventually, probably from the exhaustion of fright, we fell asleep. What must have been hours later, I awoke to a faint rasping sound that sounded like a child crying. I gazed outside in confusion and saw the outline of a creature that seemed to be a buck, standing over something. It seemed to be about 20 feet away, but at a closer glance had unnaturally long limbs for a buck and was eerily tall. In sudden fear, I unloaded 2 shots into the creature and heard a loud blood-curdling C or Y.M. My girlfriend awoke screaming to the shots I had fired as I tried to explain what I had heard. To my surprise, the animal hadn't moved an inch. Then I noticed the stains on the side of the animal. It looked like blood was running down the edge, and lots of it. It stared at me deep into my eyes as I became petrified with fear. A sinister feeling of dread fell over me as if it knew I couldn't move. I thought to myself, what if it starts to bolt towards us? Just then, this tall, decrepit demonic thing seemed to whisper something. I couldn't exactly tell what it was saying, but it seemed to have said, "I need more children." My girlfriend screamed, asking where our son was. We blacked out. In the morning, we awoke to park rangers at our campsite. We didn't see our son anywhere. We told the rangers that he was missing, and they started a search party. I explained what had happened, and strangely they seemed to believe it. The one who seemed to be older by at least a decade pulled along the one we met earlier and whispered in his ear. I only heard a single line, and I'm not even sure if what I heard was correct. It sounded like he said, "It's getting bolder." They didn't seem to want us by ourselves, so they waited with us while they continued the search. We stayed in a log cabin for 3 days with a forest ranger. When suddenly some rangers came into the cabin saying they couldn't find our son, my girlfriend starts to sob. I start to hate myself, thinking that I could have done something if I wasn't frozen in fear. We rushed outside only to find some injured and frightened police officials. The rangers wouldn't tell us anything of what happened or what they saw, or why the cops were scared shitless. All we know is that we don't have a son anymore. God help whoever goes into that forest next, and please, please don't bring your kids with you. Wendigo encounter. This is a repost. I had to fix some spacing errors. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I'm scared shitless. After hearing stories and looking stuff up online, I'm fairly sure it was a Wendigo. Me, my son, and girlfriend were attacked by something. We were camping up in the northernmost area of Washington. My girlfriend is incredibly superstitious, so she insisted we brought weapons. So I had my combat knife and a 12-gauge shotgun, and she brought a .22 rifle alongside a newly sharpened machete. Our son was just 3 years old at the time. She and I were set on edge from a park ranger who seemed very tense and uneasy, who stopped us and instead of confiscating our weapons told us to be careful and stay safe, then sent us along our way to the camp. When we got there, we were informed that several visitors had spoken about some unnatural noises and a pale creature that would mimic voices and sounds of people who weren't talking or seeming to be distracted. I laughed and put the idea out my mind, thinking to myself, there's no way. They're fucking with us. But I knew better. So we then reached the area we were going to set up camp. We immediately got a fire ready to light and set up our tent and bags. I fed my son as my girlfriend ate a snack. We decided to get a lay of the area, so me and my girlfriend hiked around for about an hour or so. I had one of those baby-carrying backpacks, and my son started to get real heavy. Everything seemed normal until I saw something down the almost path we were on. We walked closer to investigate and saw drag marks. It looked as if someone had killed a buck. There was a hole outlined in the dirt with a small dried pool of blood, as if someone grabbed it from the antlers and pulled. That wouldn't be possible for any man to do. The buck, or whatever it was, would have been way too big for that. Shaken, we rushed back to base camp and restarted the fire and hurried back into our tent. Too afraid to leave since it was dusk by now, we stayed inside the tent, and my girlfriend put our son to bed. Eventually, probably from the exhaustion of fright, we fell asleep. What must have been hours later, I awoke to a faint rasping sound that sounded like a child crying. I gazed outside in confusion and saw the outline of a creature that seemed to be a buck, standing over something. It seemed to be about 20 feet away, but at a closer glance had unnaturally long limbs for a buck, and was eerily tall. In sudden fear, I unloaded 2 shots into the creature and heard a loud blood-curdling C-R-Y-M. My girlfriend awoke screaming to the shots I had fired as I tried to explain what I had heard. To my surprise, the animal hadn't moved an inch. Then I noticed the stains on the side of the animal. It looked like blood was running down the edge, and lots of it. It stared at me deep into my eyes as I became petrified with fear. A sinister feeling of dread fell over me as if it knew I couldn't move. I thought to myself, what if it starts to bolt towards us? Just then, this tall, decrepit demonic thing seemed to whisper something. I couldn't exactly tell what it was saying, but it seemed to have said, "I need more children." My girlfriend screamed, asking where our son was. We blacked out. In the morning, we awoke to park rangers at our campsite. We didn't see our son anywhere. We told the rangers that he was missing, and they started a search party. I explained what had happened, and strangely, they seemed to believe it. The one who seemed to be older by at least a decade pulled along the one we met earlier and whispered in his ear. I only heard a single line, and I'm not even sure if what I heard was correct. It sounded like he said, "It's getting bolder." They didn't seem to want us by ourselves, so they waited with us while they continued the search. We stayed in a log cabin for 3 days with a forest ranger. When suddenly some rangers came into the cabin saying they couldn't find our son. My girlfriend starts to sob. I start to hate myself, thinking that I could have done something if I wasn't frozen in fear. We rushed outside only to find some injured and frightened police officials. The rangers wouldn't tell us anything of what happened or what they saw, or why the cops were scared shitless. All we know is that we don't have a son anymore. God help whoever goes into that forest next, and please, please don't bring your kids with you.